Okay, welcome. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of CoachesCorner.health. We are so glad that you're here. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you're a seasoned veteran and been following us for a while, welcome back. Today, we're going to be diving into the topic of the costs and benefits of staying single to focus on your career. You have the career or the business of your dreams, and everything seems to be going really good, but now you're starting to question if it's worth it, if it's just you and you have no one to share your successes, hopes, and dreams with. Today, we'll be discussing the ins and outs, pros and cons of staying single to build your business or focus on your career, and some of the questions or doubts that you may have about this particular subject that could be right where you find yourself. But first, before we get started, let me tell you who I am. My name is Leslie Cadet. I am a self care specialist for busy female entrepreneurs, and I help my clients make self care their number one priority to support them in life and business so that they stay sharp, focused, and wake up with more energy and intention to tackle their daily activities with confidence. Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Leslie. I love your introduction every time. It's awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm Andy. I'm the unconditional coach. I help people with boundaries and control issues. And quite honestly, the boundaries and control issues is one of the things that can come out of the conversation we have today. Some people do have control issues. That's why they've been single. Some people have significant boundaries. That's why they've been single. And some people don't. And that's also why they're single. So, yeah, good conversation today. I'm looking forward to it. So, let's start with your experience, as we often do in this series. Tell me about what you've decided. What you've. I mean, you've been married for several years now, a few decades. But at some point, you weren't married. So,
Mhm.
why did you choose to not be married for a while, and what did that help you do?
Yeah, so when I was 20, actually, it was the first time I was engaged to someone, and he was the wrong guy all around. But at the time, I didn't really know that. I think I was so excited to be engaged. But I knew even then that I would not get married before 25. I actually had a number that I had
Mhm.
decided would be the magic number that would be okay for me to actually entertain the possibility of getting married, and that was 25. Of course, we broke up and I ended up, moving on to someone else. And that was a very long term relationship. I did want to get married. So I was not choosing to be single. It was just something that was part of my life. And so, of course, I'm going after my career, creating that, but always focused on that at some point I wanted to be married and have a family. That did not work out with that person. And I was devastated. I have to say, I was really devastated. But I ended up a few short weeks later, and this is how quick it was. A few short weeks later, meeting the man that I would soon marry, and I, we it was really whirlwind, quick. Within 9 months of meeting each other, we were married, and as you've said, we've been married now for 27 years. But there wasn't the choice of going after my career to and not have someone in my life, except that I did have in place a particular number that I was going to only start then to entertain marriage, because I didn't want to get married before I was 25. I felt like I wouldn't have been ready, and I really wanted to like build, build my career and see where that took me. But yeah, so my experience is probably different from a lot of people who might have chosen building a business or focusing on getting their career to where they want it to be before they entertain an actual relationship and then possibly marriage. But I think actually, honestly, my advice had always been after I got married. My brother, who's 2 years younger than I, he got married a year and a few months before I did. But he'd been with his same girl for a long time. I have a point to this, but my youngest brother had not yet gotten married, and I started realizing that it was okay to focus on creating your life the way you want to enjoy your life, enjoy your 20s, and create your life the way you want it to be. And then, if you are ready to then entertain a relationship and get married, I felt like that would be the best scenario. And that's what I started to really embody and to embrace and to actually, I was encouraging my youngest brother to, wait and make sure before he went there. So I did have a change of heart about marriage, and about having a relationship, a serious relationship, when you hadn't yet like created a life for yourself. But that only came after I had gotten married. And again, that was my experience of how I wanted it to be. Then I soon realized, I think this would be really great, that enjoy your life and create your life. And then, it's okay. I felt like it was an okay thing to do. So what's your experience been? I can't hear you, Andy. I think you're muted.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you for that reminder. Um, yeah, I actually I chose to pursue a relationship before a career because coming out of high school, I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I went to college for a little while to pursue that. I decided I hated it. So, I dropped out of college and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So eventually, I chose to pursue a relationship first. Um, that didn't turn out a lot better for me. I was in my late 20s before I actually met the lady that I eventually married. So for me, it was several years of floundering aimlessly. So my experience doesn't match this either. And maybe that's appropriate because I think the experiences that we both do have match a lot of other people. But what we're speaking to today is somebody who did stay single specifically to focus on your career on their career. So I don't know about yourself, but I do know several people that did that. I know several people who specifically chose to wait until they had what they wanted before they pursued a relationship. And some of them never did. Um, a lot of them are Christian, some of them are not. Um, so some of them, decided to wait because of faith values. Some of them decided to wait because of um, you know personal beliefs or morals, and some of them chose to wait because they really wanted to be sure who they were
Hmm.
before they could offer themselves to somebody else. And as you mentioned, it's really difficult to do that before you're 25. I would add that it's probably difficult to do that before you're 30,
Hmm.
but at least 25,
Definitely. Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have anybody in my life that I can think of personally, of like my friendships, of my friends, not they were pursuing both at the same time. They
mhm.
wanted that relationship, they wanted to have a family at the same time as having the career, so they entertained both at the same time. I really didn't have anybody in my life that I knew. Most of my friends got A lot of my friends really got married before I did. And I think that that was just because that was by choice. They wanted to have both at the same time and be able to have a family at the same time. So I'm curious to know about the experiences that you've mentioned of the people that you know personally that have actually adopted that lifestyle first.
Yeah, well, there's a few that I'm thinking of because um, my kids grew up as a part of a specific children's camp that my wife had gone to when she was a child, and therefore she was volunteering there every summer, all summer long, um, for a while, and actually eventually got a paid position there. So we were out at that camp all summer long. Therefore, we watched a few teenagers grow up and then eventually couple up. with each other. And several of them chose not to have any significant relationships besides the typical teenager puppy love or dating kind of a thing. They chose specifically not to have a serious life partner because they wanted to pursue their individual careers, often in youth ministry or in um, some sort of a youth oriented career because of their experience at the camp. Some of them had specific outdoorsy kinds of careers that they wanted to choose. And there's one couple that I know who actually did get into a serious relationship as they were, aging out of the camp. They did really enjoy each other's company, but they chose to wait until they were older before they actually got married. So they just kind of stayed dating. They were they were I won't say serious dating in the case like a lot of us might think of that. They weren't living together. They weren't having sex. They weren't doing a lot of the traditional things that people might think of when somebody is dating seriously. But they were committed to each other, and they did stay committed to each other that entire time while each of them went to university, while each of them then started their careers after university. And it wasn't long after they started those careers, a couple of years, where they decided, okay, now it's time to plan our wedding. They both had significant families, so it took a little while to plan. So by the time they did actually get married, they'd been well established in their careers with credentials, um, and and it really set the tone for the rest of their relationship. They've been married now several years. They have a number of kids, and it really has set the tone for their relationship. The they really have kept the foundation of their careers. Not that they didn't change jobs or even change companies or even the type of work that they do. They both did, but they were still in related fields to what they went to university for. Both of them are still doing jobs related to something that they were trained in. So I think that was significant for them, and both of them are very outgoing and high performing kinds of people. So they wanted to make sure that they got to take advantage of their skills and talents, their hardworking lifestyle, their ability to apply themselves. They wanted to take advantage of that before they then refocus that on doing the same thing for their family. Um, and so for the two of them, because they made it as a conscious choice together, as you said, they they weren't technically single, much like your friends. The only difference is these two didn't get married, and they were very traditional Christian in what that meant. Um, so by the time they did get married, their lives all changed. So yeah, that's the one couple. And another couple or another person that I know who waited, he was looking for a specific kind of person, and it turns out he could not find that person within that community. He had to go outside of that community to a different lifestyle, to a different set of values to find the kind of woman he was looking for. And once he did, um, he did settle down with somebody. The I guess the caveat there is that he wasn't trying to stay single, so he doesn't quite fit the profile we're talking about today. But he did stay single, and therefore maybe accidentally focused on his career and had something to offer her by the time he was done. Um, so those are the two biggest examples. I can think of several others, ladies who did what they wanted first. Um, and some of them, because they focused on their career first, by the time they decided to focus on finding a relationship, it's almost like they felt out of the game. They felt like they lost their opportunity. They were kind of floundering around in the social circles and didn't really, know how to meet people because all of their friends had already coupled up. All the other people from, you know, their communities and the people that they grew up with and they'd already coupled up. So there was a few of them, men and women, who were just kind of floundering around. They weren't interested in each other, and they couldn't figure out how to find partners to be interested in. There's a couple of girls that I know who are twins that, although they've had significant people in their lives, neither one of them has really found that one person. So, there's a few people I'm thinking of who had different varying results of whether it was good or bad for them to focus on their career first. Right?
Yeah, and there comes those challenges, right? Because it went, and that's what we're, I think, is part of this conversation is when you do focus on the one thing, one or the other. But for the purposes of this conversation, if you're focusing on just your career or building a business, uh, and it's all, you come to that crossroads in your life, like, okay, you might be asking the question, okay, like now I'm ready. I want to start have that person in my life, but how do I even start looking when everyone I know that's around me has already achieved that, which I'm now looking to do, or those people in my life that are around me haven't yet achieved that. And so we're all in the same boat. And how do we figure that out? Because we've put all of our eggs in one basket, and allowed ourselves to like focus. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like when you're building your career, when you're building a business or you're like furthering your career and you are, you're just trying to make sure that you have that part of your life settled. That is, there's nothing wrong if that's your choice. But now we come to this place where, okay, I chose to be single. And again, like you said, some people didn't choose, they were looking, but in the meantime, they were, a lot of their focus went to the career until that could happen. But even if you were the person that wasn't looking specifically and you chose to do the one thing, which was build your career or your business, uh, the challenge, I guess, now could be that you're now at this place that you've created these successes in your life, but now you could be questioning, like, okay, is it, is this enough? Or how do I find, because I'd like to be able to share this with someone else, because who do you come home to? I think that was one of the things for me that I found really beautiful, was that I had someone to come home to talk about work. Unfortunately, I brought home a lot of the negative, but when I could bring home the positives, I had someone to celebrate with me.
Mm-hmm.
If I got a new job somewhere, I got a new offer, or if I made got a raise, or I got promoted, or I got recognized, having that person to come home to share that with, that's like a pro to not being single, and actually still building my career, because I still was doing that, you know as opposed to when I when you're single and you choose only to focus on the one. Now you might be saying, okay, I don't have anyone really. I mean, you might have your family, and that's great. Family is important.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to matters of the heart, we're always looking for that. At some point, when we start thinking about love, we want someone else to like love those parts about us, that, oh, you're
Yeah.
doing great in business, you're really, your career is going well, or I love what you're doing here, like, you're so, um I'm looking for the right word, but you go after what you want. And that's like that's huge when you have somebody else cheering you on and pointing those things out to you, like having that
Yes.
celebration partner.
Yeah.
So I think that is why, I think a lot of people now, especially, as I've seen, you and I have talked about this, that a lot of people are either choosing not to get married or choosing to wait longer to get married. Uh, and they're still then pursuing traditional rules, living together, having a relationship, but they're not taking that to the next step, the next level of getting married and maybe having a family, because they're still both equally, although they're in the relationship, they're equally building their career or business, and they're focused on that. And I found like that's what I've noticed a lot is that the younger generation seems to really talk about when they talk about someone in their life, but and they have a career, that it's their partner, but it's you know when does that become life partner? Where you start thinking that way, and the choice to be single and build your career is not as as attractive as maybe being in a relationship with someone who supports you and that you're also pursuing that relationship and building your career. I think that is a question that maybe some of them are now starting to think like, how do I transition from the all in on the other to like now I can have both? Because I think that's what scares a lot of people. They don't think they can have both. They think, oh, if I go and have a relationship or start to my job is going to suffer, my business is going to suffer because I'm putting all my now I'm putting my attention and focus on another person. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I agree that that is some of the thoughts that some of the young people are having. What I've discovered with my own kids and the people they hang out with, many of them have gotten married young. Many of them have gotten into relationships, and even some of them have had children. And my kids haven't. But what I've discovered is kids today are a lot more discerning about what a relationship is. They're not a lot more concerned about what actually is this thing we're calling a relationship. Is this something I want? And they're also very discerning about a career. I mean, you just have to look at the whole job market in North America for the past, year or 2 years, and you'll see all kinds of news stories about what young people today are deciding to do with their jobs and not do. So I think, excuse me, I think young people today are a lot more discerning, a lot more, a pessimist might say, picky
Hmm.
about what they're looking for. So, well, to the outside, it might look like they're, you know, focusing on their career or focusing on this or focusing on that. I think in some ways, some of them are they're anti-focusing. They're choosing not to focus on a relationship until one a suitable one presents itself. Till somebody comes into their life that really represents the kind of person they want to be with. And I think some of them that's what they're doing. Now, by some of them I don't know if that's, a small percentage or if that's a large majority or somewhere in between. I'm not sure how big the number is, but I do believe that some of them are choosing not to focus on the thing that they don't have a viable um, possibility for
Hmm.
till something presents itself. So they don't focus on the relationship because there's nobody in their life they want to be in a relationship with, or they don't focus on their career because they don't know what they want to do for a career, or so they're not choosing one or the other, or they're choosing to explore their options in quotes. Maybe date a few people, maybe try a few jobs. I'm not really sure what I want, so let's try some stuff out, right? And then they focus on the one that gives them what they're looking for until they find something else. I think that's what a lot of them are doing. Um, and in that way, I find that I that's what I was doing. That's what I've been doing for a few years now is not so much that I didn't want a relationship after my ex left. It's more that I wasn't searching for one. It's not that I didn't want a career. It's that I didn't know what it was I wanted to do until a few years ago when I bumped into life coaching and realized that's what I want to do. So I think for some people, it's not so much what am I focusing on, is what am I choosing to not put my attention towards, not focus on. And I think that's why a lot of them are being perceived as aimless and carefree and, very hippie like, is that they haven't found something that's worthy of their focus. They haven't found something that's worthy of their attention. You know, when Google and video games and the newest social media apps can get their attention, why should some mediocre possibility for a job or a dating partner, when I can get the same level of attention from some online community? I'm going to wait for the person, the one who really represents who I want to date. I think that's what a lot of them are doing. And there's cost and benefits to that too. That's my thoughts.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't think there's like a right and wrong, and that's kind of like why I like having this conversation, because I think for me as an example, just to go off topic a little bit, because it's relevant to this, is when, you know, being married and my husband and I decided to choose a certain lifestyle, which was instead of waiting to retire to then start visiting the places that we wanted to go, we decided to live in those places and work at the same time. So we were able to do both. And I remember, you know, very vividly when someone asked me if I had children, and I said no. We decided, this was by the time I was 40, so I was a little over, like, I was either the 40 or just past 40 by maybe a year or two. And someone has asked me, like, are you going to have children? And we said no, that we didn't want to have children. And she said, you have to. And I said, but why? And she says, because you're supposed to. So those have tos and those supposed tos and the should haves, that's what I think gets a lot of people feeling like, oh, this is my path. That's the path I chose isn't good enough. And that's why I wanted to bring it around to that, because I thought, to me, I didn't feel like that it was a must that we have children. We did not have children. We decided not to. And the reason was because we wanted to live in the places that we didn't want to just wait for retirement. We wanted to be able to live around different places. We've lived in multiple states and multiple provinces, and we've lived in 3 countries and over the course of our marriage. And it would have been, to me, especially based on my own life experience, unfair for us to drag our kids everywhere we were going. They might have appreciated it. I don't know. But I know specifically from my own experience as a young child, when we moved a lot, that it was really hard, because you're building your relationships with your friends. They mean everything to kids. Your friends mean everything to you. They're like your lifeblood. And I remember how heartbroken I was when we would move. So we decided we're not going to do that. So we decided not to have children. So bringing that back to this, I think when someone is single, they're probably getting the question, when are you going to get married? I'm sure that just seems to be a question. It's a generational thing. Um, it'll probably eventually be, at some point fizzle out, or maybe continuous. I don't know. Maybe it might not be as in the mainstream. But I know that generations are like, when are you going to get married? And then the next question is, when are you going to have kids? And if someone has chosen to be single to build their career, and they could have a reason for that. It's like, I want to be established before I go out and have a relationship. Or they're building a business and they want the business to be established so that it's running well, so that when they do focus on someone else to bring into the fold, that, things are good. I mean, life isn't perfect, but at least they may feel that way. But when they're getting those questions from, the grandparents or the parents who come from maybe generational backgrounds, saying, like, you have to get married, you have to go to school, you have to get a degree, you have to get a job, you stay there until you retire, and in the meantime you find a spouse, you get married, you have children, and the story. And you have a house with a white picket fence, 2 kids, a dog, the traditional, what people used to call the American dream. And I think now the younger generation is saying, no, wait a second, we want this. I want to have a career. I want to choose what I do with my life. Even if right now I might be all over the place, not really knowing exactly what that is, I want to be able to choose that first, then choose the next part. So is that wrong for me to do that? And I think that is where maybe some of the conversations need to maybe change a little bit and extend that grace to the communities of people who choose the one path first, and then decide for the next.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and to combine the point that you said with the one that I was saying, if they choose to wait until something fits their profile of what they're looking for, whether that's a career or a partner, what's wrong with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and you're right. I do believe there's still some generational questions. I don't entirely know that it's strictly generational because I believe in every generation there's always some people who grew up traditional, some people who grew up very, um, you know, free and easy, and I think that it kind of wavers which generations have more of which one. So I don't know that that's so much going away, but you're right. It is a generational question in that it's usually the older parents and the grandparents who are asking those kinds of questions. When are you going to have children? When are you going to, what are you doing to university? What are you going to university for? Um, so that's the traditional life path that you described. The American dream kind of a life path. Graduate high school, go to university, get a degree, um, go as high as you can in your education, then go get a career and do that career till you retire, and then you get to enjoy life. In the meantime, you should be having a family and settling down with some kids and buying a house and having a pet, and it better be a traditional pet like a cat or a dog, because nobody wants baboons running around the neighborhood. Right. um, so and every time we vary from that path, we are judged. Now, not all of us are judged by all the people, but somebody somewhere is likely judging us, likely somebody in our family. And if not, there are friends and distant relatives that probably are. And what's the issue at hand here is what are your personal values? What is it you care about? What is it that you want? And this is where I come back to the conversation around boundaries and control issues. Who's controlling you? Are you deciding what's good for your life? Is somebody setting your path out for you? Do you have a choice? Do you know how to give yourself a choice? Do you know how to present your choices to others? Right? Do you know how to stand up for yourself? Those are the kinds of questions that I would ask. And if you know what you want, and what you want isn't illegal and isn't in the traditional sense immoral, it's the problem, right? A lot of us have what we think is immoral, what we think is unethical. A lot of us have these opinions about how we're supposed to live. It's immoral to stay single. It's immoral to not have children. And I would question that. There's all kinds of examples all over society of people who are great people who didn't do those things. So I would I would ask you, do you know how to know what you want and present what you want to the rest of the world? And if what you want is that American dream style, traditional lifestyle, great. If what you want is something entirely different from that, great too.
Mhm.
There isn't a right or a wrong. Your path is your path. right? So that's where I would go with that. Yet, what's the what's the costs? Let's talk for a minute because we've been talking about the benefits of staying single to focus on your career. We've been talking about the doing it your own way. We've been talking about, you can have a choice. We've been kind of promoting that each person gets their own option. But let's talk for a minute about what is the cost of staying single to focus on your career. What do you lose out on if you focus on your career or your business at the expense of pursuing a relationship?
Yeah, great question. And I think that really comes down to what it is actually that you see your bigger picture being. If your bigger picture is having the career of your dreams or the business of your dreams, having a family as well, and you see this in your future, what's the cost to you to wait? Because there's nothing, life doesn't just decide like when you're ready to have your career or you're ready to have your family that it's going to turn out the way you want. This just doesn't work that way because things change from day to day. So it's having that bigger picture, but then asking yourself, okay, what what am I willing to do? It's like anything in life. Like, what am I willing to do? How long am I willing to wait to actually pursue a certain thing in life? Or how long am I willing to wait for something to happen? Or how long am I willing to wait to have to create something and then add something else into my life? And what are the we've talked about benefits, but what are the costs that if, for example, you decided I'm going to wait till, let's just talk about a man, for example, decides I'm going to go through my 20s into my mid 30s. I want to go to, get my degree, get out there, start my business or my career, really focus on that. By the time I'm 35, I'm going to have that career of my choice. It's going to be working well, or the business is going to be going well. Now I'm going to look for someone to spend my life with. Now I'm in my mid 30s. Now I'm looking for someone who will fit that mold, who wants to have kids. And now, as the man getting older, he's waiting. Maybe he finds someone who's around ish the same age or maybe a few years younger who's ready to get married, but are they ready to have children? And now you got to find someone who's on the same wavelength as you. uh, just knowing from people, one person in particular, a friend of mine in particular, her and her brother, her parents didn't get married until they were in their late 30s and started having their kids in their 40s. And so now their kids are older, and both parents are now deceased, but they were, you wait, your kids are now, say, her one's just passed away and he was 94. The cost, I think, and I've heard this said from other people that I know, the reason why some of my friends got married early, as I was saying earlier, they wanted to have both at the same time, was because they wanted to experience quality of life through the entire family part of it, so that they have kids when they're young so they can enjoy when they're older. They're not too old to enjoy life with their kids.
Mhm.
And that if their kids have babies of their own, they're not too old because their kids are closer to them, in the age gap is closer. But as if you wait till you're older, as I was saying, I was using a man as an example, waiting, or even a woman doing the same thing. We can flip it. A woman waits till she's 35 and starts looking, but now she's thinking, oh, I actually want to have kids. Well, now she's got a shorter window because, you know, when it comes to having children, for women, it's not, men can really father children for much longer than women can actually have children.
Yes.
So, there comes that. Um, you factor that in. There's now that time crunch, and maybe the mindset of like they're rushing because they need to find someone and might not find the right person who has the right values, but they just know this person is ready to have kids, ready to have a relationship and ready to have kids. But then what does that do to the relationship of that family dynamic? Is it going to be great? Is it going to be a good family dynamic, loving? and the family stays together for the long run, or does it just like they rush together, they have kids, at some point they fall out of love, they they become distant to each other, they split, and they had the one thing they wanted, which was a family and getting married and having kids, but it didn't work out because the cost was they waited so long to make that happen. And so I think it really, I think at any age, I think there's not really going to be a one size fits all model to finding someone. But I think the younger that you are, that you start looking for that relationship, I think it will be easier for you to know what you want and figure that out. You're not rushing the process of rushing into marriage and having kids, but you might find that life partner who has the same values as you, and it's because you're not in the back of your mind thinking, "Ooh, I only have like a small window to have kids. I got to find someone. I got to get married. I got to have kids right away." Whereas when you're younger, you can stretch that out a little bit and not feel that added pressure. So I think that's part of the cost of waiting, especially if a family is what you want. Now, if let's just talk about the other part real quick. If you're the person who doesn't want to have a family, the one part that I think could be the cost there is finding someone like yourself at that later stage in your life who feels exactly the same way as you are, because a lot of people want to have kids and there are some that don't, or there's some that, like myself, I did want to have a family, but then as it turned out, I changed my mind. My husband and I both agreed on it, that it wouldn't benefit for me to have us to have children just because of our lifestyle, and it was okay, we were both okay with that. So I think it's like, find then the cost is finding someone like-minded like yourself in that same way of thinking. So what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree in that there is no right path. There is no one size fits all. And the cost of staying single to focus on your career is that you could lose that opportunity. It could, or you could close the window so small that you become desperate to find somebody and you just marry the first person that says yes. That could be a recipe for disaster also. Um, Again, it depends on how long you wait. So there's plenty of things you could lose out on. And for if you do wait and then you are looking for you're looking for somebody that matches your values, it's going to be harder because you're going to put pressure on yourself, and by putting pressure on yourself you're going to be putting pressure on anybody you date. I i know of several people that in my life right now that have pressure because my clock is ticking, I'm not getting any younger, and their partner, their chosen partner, is not concerned about that. They're like, yeah, either their partner already has children, or their partner's like, I don't really want children, so I'm okay with that. Um, so one of them has this clock is ticking mentality, and the other one just doesn't really concern themselves with it as much. So that puts pressure onto the relationship itself. Now the relationship is rocky because your values aren't the same. When actually 98% of your values are the same. We don't want kids. We're both old enough. We don't want kids anymore. Yet one of us feels like we should have had or missed out on, and the other one doesn't. So that adds pressure to the relationship. So there is some costs of staying single. There is some cost of just being single for a while. Yet, I think if we all are a little bit conscious of what we're doing and we choose what we want, as we've talked about a few times in this video already, if we're conscious of what we want, and that's a big ask right there. The first question is, what is it that you want? And if you don't know how to answer that question, then find somebody to help you answer that question first. Second, Do you know how to get what you want? Um, for example, although I did choose to pursue a relationship early on, and then I found one in my late 20s, when that one didn't work out because all I cared about was getting in a relationship, I was less concerned about is she the right person for me. When that one eventually fell apart, which it did, I've since then been more focused on building the life I want to build so that when the right woman comes along, I'm ready. And I am intentional about choosing who I want to be in a relationship with. So that when somebody does come along, and somebody has recently for me, I want to be intentional about giving that person my attention. I want to be intentional about where my focus is at, where my attention goes. I want to be on purpose choosing my career at this point, my relationship at this point. Here's the priority levels. Here's, this is what I know what I want. I'm very clear about what I want. I'm very clear about how to ask for it. I'm very clear about how to listen to what that person wants, right? All of the skills that I think a person needs to be adequate or have a positive and healthy relationship. I have been working for years to build those skills so that I can help other people build them as a life coach. Therefore, I've had some practice using them. And I've done that on purpose. I think that's a good way to approach it. Now, if we're young people, if we're talking to young people and they've never been in a relationship before, or they've never been in a serious enough one where they are thinking about marriage, or they haven't had a career, they don't know what they want. My advice would be exactly that: to figure out what you want, pursue that. There is a cost to waiting. There's also benefits to waiting. There is a cost to doing it early, to get into a relationship early. There's also a benefit to getting into a relationship early. There's pros and cons on any side of any story. I think the magic here is to figure out what you want, figure out what your personal values are, what you want, not what your mom and dad tell you you think you should want, not what your faith, your religion, your job, your the spaghetti monster. I don't care who it is telling you what you need. Not It's not about what they need. I think it's the spaghetti monster because when I was talking about faith, I read an article once about a guy who invented his own faith and called it the spaghetti religion or something like that, and he wore a colander on his head to celebrate his faith. And he wanted to be allowed to wear a colander on his head because it was a religious artifact. So that's what I thought of as a spaghetti monster. But anyway, that's a side story. If Figure out what your values are, figure out which of these options works best for you, pursue that. Not what somebody tells you your values are, but what your values actually are. And if you're not outside of your parents' influence, outside of the influence of those who have told you what you want, if you're not far enough away from them, distance, time, and emotionally, if you're not detached from them, then you won't know what you want very much. So it'll take some time to detach yourself and then get somebody to help you through that, to help you through the idea of finding out what it is you want. Once you have that, then you can decide the best path forward. As we've said several times, there isn't a right or wrong. There is no cookie cutter answer. There is no one size fits all. There is what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, absolutely. Well, we are coming up to close to the top of the hour. I don't know if there's really anything more we need to cover. I think we've really kind of gone around the entire
Yeah, I agree.
idea of being single and focusing on your career as opposed to focusing on maybe the cost of or sorry, I should say that, yeah, the cost of not doing that. So I think we've answered the questions. And
I think you have.
but I definitely am. We are open if you have any questions that we didn't answer today in today's episode. Please put them in the comments, and we will definitely get back to you. Or you can reach out to us and let us know if you have any questions about like about where what we talked about, then definitely um, reach out to us. Either
Yeah.
way, we are always willing to hear what you have to say
Yes,
and
please.
answer any questions that you may have, just to make sure that we cover everything on a topic, especially too, because it can be. I mean, there's a lot that we could talk about, but
Yes.
definitely just need to hear from our audience and let them tell us what they're looking for when it comes to the specific topic that we are already on. And if
Yep.
there is anything that they want to hear more about, then we're open to that. But yeah, I think
Yes.
we've kind of covered it. Is there anything you wanted to say before we go?
I think we've covered it like you said. So thank you everybody for watching, for participating. Thank you for your questions and your comments. Thank you for joining us, and we ask if this was helpful to you to please share it around to those people you know that you think it could be a benefit. Subscribe to the channel so you get notifications when we do go live, and and leave us a comment. Leave us your questions. Leave us your comments. Let us know what you think. If there's anything else you'd like us to talk about or other topics you want us to cover, let us know. We'd like that. Um, yeah. So uh, on that note, I'm pretty good. I'll give you a last chance to say something, Leslie, and then we can sign off.
Yeah, no, I just think that really honestly, it's really what you want. It's your choice. If don't allow anyone to shame you into believing that what you're doing is wrong. If you decide that you want to focus on your career first and or your business and get it to a place where you feel comfortable and confident that you can now focus on something else. But I also want to say also don't wait too long so that your windows close, especially if you have a bigger picture outlook on what your life looks like, because we talked about we don't want you to get into that desperate place where the window is closing based on where you see yourself at in your life because you feel like, "Oh, now I'm ready," because there's not really any right time, but it's what works for you. So, but also knowing that if there is a time when it comes to having children, we really do want to talk about that because there is, the window does get shorter and shorter based on just biology, right? I mean, it's just nature. So there's nothing we can do about that. So if that's what you've decided, you want to have a family in the future, then look at the bigger picture and see the timing. Does it work for you to wait 10 years as opposed to maybe shortening it to 6 or 7 to get started looking, and maybe that's another way for you to look at it. But either way, allow yourself the ability to look at the bigger picture, decide what's good for you. Don't allow people to shame you into believing that what you're doing is wrong because it's your life, not theirs. And enjoy your life and create the life that you want by just going out and being intentional and allowing yourself to be intentional and enjoying your life. So on that note, I just wanted to say thank you. I hope you have a beautiful weekend. Make sure that you spend some time with family, with loved ones, creating those deeper level bonds. Make sure you take care of you. Don't make it all about work. Make sure you take some self care time. And I think on that, that's all I really have to say. So I hope you have a great week. And as always, we'll see you again on next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching.